Imagine unwrapping a chocolate bar and taking that first bite, that rich, satisfying flavor exploding on your tongue. But have you ever stopped to think about what you're actually eating? Because not all chocolate is the same. In fact, the chocolate world is full of surprising stories, secret techniques, and varieties that most people have never even heard of. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating universe of chocolate. From the ancient dark bars that once served as money in Mesoamerica, to the pink ruby chocolate that's blowing up the industry right now. You'll discover how each type came to be, what makes them taste and feel so different, and why some chocolates melt perfectly while others crumble in your hand. Stick around because by the end of this two-part series, you'll have a whole new appreciation for every bar you break into. It all starts with the cacao tree. These special trees were first cultivated way back around 1500 BCE by the Olmec people in what we now call Mesoamerica. The Mayans and Aztecs loved cacao so much they used the beans as actual currency. Think about that. You could literally pay for goods with chocolate money. They prized it highly, not just for eating, but for its cultural and even spiritual significance. Fast forward to modern times, and dark chocolate is what many consider the purest form. By definition, dark chocolate has to contain at least 50% cacao solids. Premium bars push that all the way up to 99%. The percentage on the label tells you exactly how much comes from the cacao bean itself versus added sugar and other ingredients. The smooth texture we all know and love today, that was pioneered by Belgian chocolatiers back in the 19th century. They invented something called the conching process, where the chocolate mixture is ground and kneaded for hours, sometimes even days. This step removes any grittiness and creates that silky feel. Now here's where it gets interesting. The higher the cacao percentage, the more intense and complex the flavors become. Depending on where the beans were grown, you might taste fruity notes in one bar, earthy undertones in another, or even nutty hints in a third. It's like wine tasting but with chocolate. Beans from different regions have unique personalities shaped by the soil, climate, and farming traditions. Next up is milk chocolate, the sweet favorite for so many of us. The story of its invention is pretty incredible. Back in 1875, a Swiss chocolatier named Daniel Peter spent 8 long years trying to mix milk into chocolate, but there was one big problem. The water in regular milk would make the whole thing spoil or separate. Nothing worked. His breakthrough came when he teamed up with his neighbor, Henri Nestle. Nestle had just invented powdered milk, and together they finally created the first stable milk chocolate. It was a game changer. These days, laws in most countries require milk chocolate to have at least 10% cacao solids and 12% milk solids. But not all milk chocolate tastes the same. American milk chocolate often has a distinctive tangy, almost sour note. That's thanks to Hershey's original recipe, which used partially lipolyzed milk. This technique helped preserve the chocolate before refrigeration was widespread. Americans loved that unique flavor so much that it became the standard taste for chocolate in the US. Let's talk about white chocolate. This one always sparks debate. Technically, white chocolate isn't really chocolate at all because it contains 0 cacao solids. Instead, it's made from cocoa butter, sugar, and milk. Nestle introduced the first commercial white chocolate in 1930 with their Gallic bar in Europe. For decades, chocolate purists refused to even call it chocolate. The FDA in the US didn't officially recognize it as chocolate until 2004. To qualify, it needs at least 20% cocoa butter and 14% milk solids. Working with white chocolate is notoriously tricky for chocolatiers. The cocoa butter melts right at body temperature, which makes it really difficult to mold and shape without it going wrong. Some experts see it less as a flavor on its own and more like a blank canvas. They use it to carry other bold ingredients like vanilla, matcha green tea, or pieces of freeze-dried fruit. One of the most exciting newer varieties is ruby chocolate. It burst onto the scene in 2017 after more than 10 years of careful development. Ruby chocolate comes from specially selected and processed ruby cacao beans grown in places like Ecuador, Brazil, and Ivory Coast. The magic happens because these beans naturally contain certain compounds. When processed in a specific way without traditional fermentation, they produce a beautiful, natural pink color and a fresh, berry-like flavor. No artificial colors or fruit flavorings are added. It's all from the bean itself. It took the Swiss chocolatier Barry Callebaut about 13 years to perfect the process and unlock this unique flavor profile. Ruby chocolate has a tart, slightly sour taste that many people compare to red berries or even a hint of citrus. In terms of composition, it needs at least 47.3% cocoa products, placing it somewhere between milk and dark chocolate. Another cool variety is blonde chocolate, sometimes called caramelized white chocolate. This one was discovered completely by accident. In 2006, a French pastry chef named Frédéric Bao left some white chocolate sitting in a bain-marie for too long. Instead of ruining it, something something amazing happened. The milk solids caramelized, turning the chocolate a gorgeous golden color. The result? A rich, toasty flavor with notes of shortbread biscuits and salted caramel. Valrhona later commercialized it in 2012 under the name Dulce. The transformation comes from the Maillard reaction, the same chemical process that browns steak or gives toast its perfect crunch. It happens when the milk proteins and sugars are gently heated for hours at around 120 degrees Celsius. Blonde chocolate tastes like a beautiful hybrid between traditional white chocolate and butterscotch, but with much more depth and complexity than regular white ever has. It's the kind of flavor that makes you close your eyes and just savor it, wondering how something so simple could taste so layered and satisfying. And yet, these are only the beginning. The chocolate world keeps evolving, pulling in ancient traditions and happy accidents that create texture and taste you won't find in your average grocery store aisle. From grainy rustic bars that crumble like stone to single estate beans that tell the story of one tiny village, there's so much more waiting. But before we go deeper into those hidden gems and the way people have been drinking chocolate for centuries, let's pause here. You've already got a solid foundation on how we went from bitter ancient beans to these modern marvels. In part 2, we'll explore the crunchy surprises, the raw versions packed with enzymes, and why some chocolates feel more like a warm hug in a cup than a solid bar. Welcome back. If you thought the first half of our chocolate journey was eye-opening, just wait. We're about to step into the lesser-known corners of this delicious world. Places where texture matters as much as taste, where one tiny village can define an entire bar, and where people have been sipping chocolate like a ritual for over 500 years. Let's start with something that feels like a time capsule, Modica Chocolate. This isn't the smooth, melt-in-your-mouth kind you grab at the corner store. It comes from a small town in Sicily that has guarded its recipe like a family secret since the 1500s. When the Spanish conquistadors brought cacao back from the Aztecs, the locals in Modica kept the old ways alive. No fancy machines, no modern shortcuts. Here's what makes it different. They never conch or refine the chocolate. That means the sugar crystals stay big and crunchy instead of dissolving into creaminess. The whole process stays cool, never hotter than about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, so nothing melts or smooths out. The result? A bar with a sandy, almost gritty texture that crumbles between your teeth instead of melting on your tongue. It honestly feels more like biting into flavored stone than classic chocolate. But that texture is the whole point. It lets the flavors hit you in waves. Deep cacao, then bright pops of cinnamon, vanilla, or even a kick of chili pepper, just the way the Aztecs originally enjoyed it. Chocolatiers in Modica still roast and grind the beans by hand in many workshops. The bars look rustic, almost homemade, and they break apart with a satisfying snap. If you've only ever had silky European chocolate, this one will surprise you. It's not trying to be elegant, it's trying to stay true. And in a world obsessed with perfection and polish, that stubborn refusal to change feels refreshing. Now let's talk about single origin chocolate, the craft chocolate movement's rock stars. Most supermarket bars blend beans from several countries to create a consistent, safe flavor. Single origin bars do the opposite. They come from one specific farm, one estate, or one tiny region. Think of it like single malt whiskey or single vineyard wine. The place where the beans grow writes the entire flavor story. Take Venezuelan cacao from the Chihuahua region. Only about 20 tons are produced each year, and the village is so remote you can only reach it by boat. The beans there develop an incredibly complex profile, nutty with hints of tobacco and dark fruit. Or head to Madagascar, where the beans taste bright, fruity, and almost acidic like a good red wine. Ecuador's national cacao brings floral notes that make you think of jasmine or roses. Soil, rainfall, altitude, even the way the farmers ferment the beans, it all leaves a fingerprint. This trend really took off in the early 2000s, right alongside the third wave coffee boom. Artisanal chocolatiers started treating cacao the same way sommeliers treat grapes. They visit farms, talk to growers, and create bars that celebrate one place on earth. Suddenly, chocolate wasn't just dessert, it was storytelling in every bite. If you pick up a single origin bar and read the back label, you're holding a little piece of agricultural history. Speaking of history with a sweet twist, let's talk about Gianduja. This Italian creation was born out of necessity during the Napoleonic Wars. The British Navy blockaded ports, making cacao insanely expensive and scarce. Smart chocolatiers in Turin started stretching their limited supply by mixing in locally grown hazelnuts. They ground the nuts into a silky paste, about 30% of the final product, and blended it with chocolate. The result was rich, spreadable, and utterly addictive. Gianduja is basically the sophisticated great-grandparent of Nutella, but unlike the mass-produced stuff, traditional Gianduja uses only Piedmont hazelnuts. walnuts. These nuts have a delicate, almost sweet flavor without the bitterness you find in other varieties. The mixture is worked until it's velvet smooth, perfect for spreading on bread or eating straight off the spoon. It feels luxurious yet comforting, like a warm hug from Italian countryside tradition. Fast forward to the raw chocolate scene. This variety exploded in popularity during the raw food movement of the 2000s. The idea is simple but strict. Keep every step under 118 degrees Fahrenheit so you preserve the natural enzymes and antioxidants. No roasting at high heat, no killing off the live elements. Traditional chocolate roasting happens between 250 and 285 degrees to develop those deep, roasty flavors we love and to kill bacteria. Raw chocolate skips all that, so it tastes more bitter, more astringent, almost earthy and intense. The texture can be a little grittier too, because lower temperatures make it harder to grind everything into perfect smoothness. Some makers use cold pressing or very gentle fermentation tricks to coax out flavor without heat. It's not for everyone, but if you're chasing maximum health benefits or just love bold, unfiltered cacao, raw chocolate delivers a completely different experience. Finally, we arrive at the original way humans enjoyed cacao, for drinking. Long before anyone thought of solid bars, the Mayans and Aztecs were whipping up cold, bitter drinks mixed with chili peppers and cornmeal. It was frothy, spicy, and nourishing. When Spanish explorers brought cacao back to Europe in the 1500s, everything changed. They added sugar, served it hot, and turned it into a luxury reserved for royalty and the elite. European drinking chocolate is nothing like the watery hot cocoa most of us grew up with. It's made by melting real chocolate into milk or water, not stirring in powder. In France and Italy, it's so thick you can practically eat it with a spoon. Spaniards pair it with churros for dipping, an unbeatable breakfast combo. And in Vienna, they crown it with a mountain of whipped cream and call it Viennese chocolate. The ritual feels almost ceremonial. You sip slowly, the richness coats your mouth, the flavors unfold layer by layer. It's comforting on a cold day, indulgent on any day, and it reminds us that chocolate has always been more than candy. It's been currency, medicine, status symbol, and shared pleasure across centuries and continents. So what's the big takeaway after exploring all these different faces of chocolate? Every bar on the shelf carries a story of ancient civilizations who valued beans more than gold, of inventors who refused to give up after years of failure, of happy accidents that gave us golden, caramelized magic, and of farmers whose land shapes every single note you taste. Next time you stand in front of the chocolate aisle, don't just grab the usual. Pick something unfamiliar. Read the label. Notice the percentage. Feel the texture. Let it melt slowly. You might discover a new favorite, or at least a deeper respect for the craft behind that simple square. Chocolate isn't just dessert. It's history you can taste, culture you can share, and pure joy in every bite. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. Now go treat yourself. You've earned it. See you in the next one.